Hey guys, tonight we are heading somewhere wild, somewhere humid, lush, a little suspicious smelling, and very, very forgotten. Close your eyes for a second. You are alone on the open sea. The skies turn the color of old bruises. Your ship creaks like it is whispering its last words. And that horizon? It is gone. Just a curtain of tropical rain smashing down. Lightning flashes. Your sail tears like parchment. And suddenly, the sea has hands. Cold, dragging, salty hands. When you wake up, you are half buried in white sand, coughing up seawater, your head resting against what appears to be a very judgmental coconut. Congratulations, you have just shipwrecked on the island where pirates paid their rent, in coconuts. And no, you probably will not survive this, but at least it will be memorable. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me, where are you listening from? And what time is it where you are? Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You sit up, groggy, every bone feeling like it was individually rearranged by Poseidon himself. The beach stretches out in both directions, framed by impossibly green trees that rustle and whisper like they know something. Birds you cannot name call overhead. Some squawk, others mimic laughter. That coconut beside you, still judging. You take it along, just in case. Your first steps off the beach feel like wading into someone's secret. The jungle is not just alive, it is alert. Bright flowers the size of dinner plates, vines thick as ropes, and insects with attitudes. Everything here pulses with the kind of life that does not wait for permission. And then, footprints, human, barefoot, deep impressions in the sand. You follow them, ducking under branches, until you catch a glimpse of something wildly out of place. A crude sign made from driftwood, nailed to a tree with what looks like a dinner fork. It reads, "Rent due. 30 coconuts. No ES." Right, that is not the heat stroke talking. You keep going. The jungle begins to thin, and suddenly, the trees open to reveal a village. Well, village is generous. Think if a group of very drunk, very resourceful people tried to recreate London using only shipwreck debris, palm leaves, and rum bottles. There is a post office made of barrels, a tavern shaped like a broken ship's hull, and hammocks strung between palm trees swaying like lazy souls. A woman balancing a parrot on her head offers you a mango with absolutely no context. You begin to piece it together. The village is real. The people here, pirates, probably, or at least their retired cousins, live by an odd sort of order. There is no gold, no doubloons jingling in pouches, but there is rent, and it is due monthly, paid in coconuts. Because on this island, coconuts are currency. The value system is both hilarious and weirdly functional. 1 coconut buys you a night in the hammock. 5 gets you a jug of fermented banana wine, which you are warned not to drink while upright. 20 coconuts can settle a duel or a dispute. And 30? That is your rent. Historians still argue whether this system began out of necessity or absurdity. One theory suggests the original pirate settlers were stranded after a mutiny with no gold and no escape, so they invented an economy from what they had. Another idea? They were just drunk and thought it was funny. Either way, it stuck. And the enforcer of this strange system? A man they call the Rent King. You see him from a distance. Feathered tricorn hat, beard like a tangled fishing net, and a coat that was once crimson, but now looks like it lost a fight with a campfire. He is lounging on a throne made of crates and crab shells, casually tossing coconuts into a wicker basket labeled "Deposit here or else." Nobody questions him. Well, not twice. The king's palace is a lopsided shack with painted windows, a pirate flag shaped like a pineapple, and a rooster that screams every time someone opens the door. He is not royalty in any official sense, but more like a landlord who has declared emotional bankruptcy. His rule is not iron-fisted, more banana wine muddled and coconut obsessed. You try to ask questions, but nobody really explains things here. They just hand you another coconut and point you toward an empty hammock. You lie back, rocking gently in the sea breeze. The stars peek through palm fronds overhead, and the rhythmic thump-thump of coconuts falling in the distance feels oddly comforting. You are not sure what just happened, or where this is exactly, but one thing's clear. This island is not lost. It has simply chosen to be forgotten. Just when you are about to doze off, someone walks by muttering about the cursed grove and last month's rebellion. You open one eye. Oh no, you are not getting comfortable yet. You wake up to the sound of a parrot screaming the word "DEBTOR" at full volume. At first, you assume it is a dream, because in what sane world does a parrot shout economic insults at strangers? But then you sit up, and the reality is somehow worse. You are being watched by a semicircle of villagers, most of whom are barefoot, holding coconuts and chewing sugarcane like it is currency. Spoiler alert, it kind of is. A man with one gold tooth and no pants clears his throat and announces newcomer owes 3 coconuts for the night. You blink. That was not in the hammock terms and conditions. You reach for your satchel and remember, you have nothing. No gold, no silver, not even a semi-respectable pebble collection. Just the coconut from yesterday. You hold it up. The crowd nods approvingly. A small boy collects it in a sack labeled cocoa-doos and offers you a half-burned biscuit in return. Not a bad exchange rate, really. Now that you are considered mildly tolerated, someone finally explains it. The rent system is real, like legally enforced real, except the law here is flexible. Rent is due once a month, calculated by how much space you occupy. A hammock is low rent. A hut? Medium rent. A hut with a door that closes and does not have chickens sleeping in your bed? Premium. But instead of currency, the entire economy revolves around, you guessed it, coconuts. They call it the nut standard. Historians still argue whether this economy began out of necessity, satire, or sheer tropical boredom. One camp believes the pirates who founded this island simply had nothing of value after a nasty mutiny, and the only abundant resource was coconuts. Another camp suggests that it started as a prank that just got out of hand. There is even a story that one early settler tried to charge someone in fish gets for lodging, but the fish kept going bad. Coconuts, on the other hand, they store well, stack neatly, and do not attract sharks. Usually, there is a formal tallying system, too. Each coconut is marked with a little black once it is accepted into the rent pool. Counterfeit coconuts are surprisingly common. That is where things get weird. Apparently, some desperate individuals have tried to pass off painted rocks, inflated pufferfish, or, on one unforgettable occasion, a loaf of bread shaped like a coconut. The bread offender was sentenced to 12 days of parrot duty, which involved feeding, bathing, and apologizing to a flock of particularly vindictive birds. Your tour guide, well, not a guide exactly, more like a pirate with too much time, leads you through the village. Name's Jonah, he says, picking at his ear with a twig. Jonah the Half-Fine. You try not to ask what happened to the other half. He explains that every month, a gathering is held to count the rent coconuts. The rent king presides from his throne, which is mostly barnacle-covered driftwood and very bad posture. If someone cannot pay rent, they either work it off, coconut harvesting duty, mosquito wrangling, or parrot dispute arbitration, or they are exiled for 7 days to the unrentable zone. Nobody really explains what that is, just hushes and the distant sound of screaming goats. Jonah also lets slip that the rent king is not the first ruler of this system. In fact, the position rotates every 5 years unless the reigning monarch is overthrown, goes missing, or drowns in fermented pineapple syrup, which historically happens more often than you would expect. And then there is the Coconut Council, a group of 5 elders who oversee rent disputes, property lines, and cases of coconut laundering, which, yes, is apparently a felony here. One member, an old woman known only as Clamshell Clara, is said to smell lies the way a dog smells fear. She has not blinked in over 2 decades. Nobody knows why. You sit in on a council meeting out of curiosity. Someone is arguing that their neighbor's palm tree dropped coconuts into their yard, and thus the nuts legally belong to them. The argument gets heated. Someone throws a coconut at someone else's feet. Clara sighs. A ruling is issued. Finders keepers. Unless the tree itself is bribed, nobody questions it. Just as you are about to leave the council hut, you overhear a whisper, something about a sacred coconut grove far on the island's northern tip, guarded by vines, legends, and a very moody goat named Kevin. Locals believe those coconuts are special, divine, possibly cursed. But here is the thing. Those coconuts are not legal tender. The rent king banned them after an entire fiscal quarter went haywire due to spiritual inflation. You ask Jonah about it. He looks you dead in the eye and says, "That grove changed my cousin. He went in a man and came out speaking fluent crab. Could not stop clicking." You laugh. Jonah does not. The deeper you walk into this place, the more it seems like a fever dream wrapped in sunburn and sprinkled with sand fleas. And yet, it functions. There are rules, routines, even relationships. There is a barter system for extra coconuts. You can trade them for stories, for fishing hooks, for a bottle of rum that may or may not contain gasoline. Every night, a tax collector goes door to door, making sure nobody is hoarding nuts. Hoarding is a crime. Hoarders are called shell snatchers and put on community watch. You spot a sign: wanted smooth-handed Frank, charged with coconut embezzlement. Reward: one perfectly ripe mango. Every part of you wants to laugh, but you do not, because now you are holding your second coconut, and suddenly you start wondering what you can get for it. You trade your second coconut for a handmade map. Well, map might be too generous. It is a piece of bark with squiggly lines carved into it, and a small X where someone apparently once tripped and broke their nose. But it is something. Jonah swears it will lead you to the village's heart, and soon enough, after passing a pig with an eye patch and a goat wearing a necktie, you stumble into what locals call the shack circle, a sort of town square made entirely of rotting lumber, sea junk, and architecture designed mostly by gravity. The buildings all lean in odd directions, like they are gossiping about you behind your back. The village is not big, but it is dense. Layers on layers of tangled rope, hanging baskets, laundry lines, and flags that look suspiciously like stolen underwear. Each shack has a personality. Some are painted, others just scorched. One appears to be built entirely from old doors. You are told it belongs to Door Dave, who only accepts visitors if they knock exactly 13 times. As you wander, you start to get a feel for the layout. There is a tavern, naturally. It is built from a broken ship hull, with cannon holes still visible in the side. Its name, the Soggy Boot, is painted in red letters made of dried crab shells. Inside, the smell of sweat, citrus, and something you suspect is expired molasses hits you like a slap. The bartender, a heavy-set woman with eyebrows like angry anchors, slides a drink your way without asking. It fizzes. You sip. It is mango, lime, and possibly regret. Someone starts playing a fiddle. A few others slap coconut shells together like drums. There is dancing, mostly by people too tired or too tipsy to care. One man does an interpretive dance to tell the story of a shark that stole his fence. It ends with him crying into a palm leaf. The village may be patched together, but its spirit is solid. Everyone here is weird in their own way. Someone walks by wearing a hat made of fish bones. Another carries a ferret on a leash made of kelp. A third claims to be a descendant of Blackbeard and offers to prove it by showing you his mole. Yet for all the chaos, there is order, a kind of pirate's honor among this ragtag group. Theft is frowned upon, not because it is immoral, but because it usually leads to fights, and fights lead to broken coconuts, and that, dear listener, is the real tragedy. You help a one-legged man named Pickle Bob repair his roof. He rewards you with a story. Used to be just jungle here, he says, hammering a plank with a conch shell. Then came the first boats. Not all pirates. Some were smugglers. Some were exiles. Some just forgot to leave. He tells you about how the earliest settlers built their homes from the wreckage of their ships. Sails became roofs. Masts became supports. Furniture, whatever washed up that day. The island became a sanctuary for those with nowhere else to go, and the village grew, building itself from salt, sweat, and sheer stubbornness. Mainstream history only whispers about places like this. No official records, no maps, just legends passed from sailor to sailor in dim lit taverns. Some say the island does not exist at all, just a mirage conjured by thirst and sunstroke. Historians still argue whether this pirate settlement was a genuine anarchist utopia or just a tropical dumpster fire held together by rum and denial. But here it is, real, breathing, slightly sticky. You are led next to the market, an open space where trade rules supreme. Stalls made of driftwood display everything from crab claws to homemade ink to cursed necklaces spoiler. They are just shells, but with a good backstory. There is even a therapy booth where a large woman named Aunt Gilda will listen to your problems in exchange for a peeled coconut. And then, at the edge of the square, you find it, the coconut bank. It is a literal pile, not guarded, not locked, just stacked in the open under a thatched canopy with a sign that reads, Steel equal banishment. Do not test US. The coconuts are counted weekly by volunteers known as the Huskers. They take their jobs very seriously. One even wears a monocle. You are told a story about a thief who once tried to take 2 coconuts from the pile. He was found 3 hours later tied to a chair, being lectured by parrots. Reformed for life, apparently. You start to settle in, slowly. The place seeps into your skin like warm seawater. You sleep in a hammock strung between 2 leaning houses. You trade stories for small meals, peel coconuts for the tavern in exchange for mango biscuits, and help repaint signs that say things like, no winking after midnight. Every evening, you watch the sunset paint the sky in gold and blood, orange streaks. And every morning, the village hums back to life with the rhythm of survival, chaotic, coconuts rolling, parrots shrieking, jokes shouted from rooftops, arguments settled by dance-offs. This is no paradise, but it is real, tangled and teetering and strangely warm. And just when you begin to think the village is all there is to this island, Jonah leans in one night, breath heavy with pineapple wine, and mutters, ever heard of the devil's palm? You shake your head. He grins, the kind of grin that never leads to anything good. You will, he says, and you will wish you hadn't. You are led at dawn, not summoned, not warned, just woken up by a wet parrot tapping your forehead with its claw. Jonah stands nearby, chewing something green and smelly. Time to see the devil's palm, he says, like it is a casual errand and not the start of what will almost definitely be a near-death experience. You do not ask questions, mostly because asking has not worked so far. You follow him northward, away from the tangled comfort of Shack Circle and into the rising jungle. The path is narrow, damp, and seems to move slightly under your feet. Either vines are unusually aggressive here, or you are still half asleep. Probably both. The deeper you go, the quieter it gets, not in a peaceful way, in a something is watching you from the leaves kind of way. Jonah eventually stops at a clearing. In the center stands a single towering palm tree, twice the size of any you have seen. It twists upward like it is reaching for something it cannot quite grasp. Its trunk is blackened and scarred. No coconuts hang from it. This, he says, is the devil's palm. According to local legend, it was the first tree on the island, long before the pirates, long before the rent. They say it sprouted from a seed dropped by a storm god or a sea demon, depending on who is drinking. Some even claim it was planted by a curse captain who died choking on a coconut he refused to pay his rent. Historians still argue whether this palm's notoriety has any botanical basis, or whether it was just the result of one really bad coconut harvest and a collective tropical panic. But no one picks coconuts from it. Not anymore. They call its fruit blood nuts, deep red husks, heavier than they should be. When you ask if they are poisonous, Jonah shrugs. Depends on your definition of death, he says. Cheerful. At its base, a series of trinkets have been placed in a rough circle. Coins, buttons, fish bones, one disturbingly lifelike doll head. Offerings, warnings, who knows? You hear rustling. A crab the size of your hand scuttles past, dragging a rusty spoon. It pauses, looks at you with what you can only interpret as disdain, and vanishes into a hole. Then comes the bleating. It starts soft, like a sleepy whimper. Then it grows and grows until the underbrush explodes and out charges Kevin, the goat, the one everyone talks about, but no one explains. He is huge, scruffy, wearing what looks like a leather bandolier. His eyes are filled with the kind of emptiness only goats and truly committed tax accountants possess. He charges you. You dodge. Barely. Jonah laughs. He does that to everyone. Do not take it personally. Kevin circles the devil's palm, occasionally pausing to stomp or glare or headbutt a tree out of sheer spite. You are told he is the grove's guardian, self-appointed. No one really knows where he came from. Some claim he is immortal. Others say he is the reincarnation of the first rent evader. Either way, this is his territory, and what territory it is. You notice now that the palm is surrounded by a ring of smaller, twisted trees. Their coconuts are oddly shaped, more oval, deeply ridged, almost like clenched fists. A few have fallen, but none have cracked open. Jonah lowers his voice. There was a time, he says, when these were legal tender, worth triple. You try not to do the math. They were stronger, he continues, faster to harvest, lasted longer. But then, things changed. He points to a nearby stump. That was old Tom. You blink. That? Yup. Got greedy. Picked 5 blood nuts in one day. Next morning, he started speaking backwards and tried to marry a jellyfish. You do not ask follow-up questions. You have learned. The story goes like this. Back when the coconut economy first boomed, the islanders discovered these strange red nuts deep in the jungle. They were bigger, oilier, and apparently had flavor notes of cinnamon and danger. For a while, they were prized, traded like luxury items. The rent king at the time even created a separate ledger for them. Then people started acting odd, not violent, not even scary, just wrong, talking in riddles, laughing at silence, hearing things that were not there. Someone tried to build a boat out of their own fingernails. Another began worshipping a mop. Eventually, the council banned the nuts, declared the devil's palm a forbidden source. Anyone caught harvesting was exiled to the reef, naked, oiled, and tied to a seagull decoy. It was not a good look. Jonah tells you this like it is all completely normal. Then he casually adds, "We still think there's a stash of them buried near the old banana wine still." But you did not hear that from me. You returned to the village with Kevin trailing behind you, not chasing, just watching. Every few minutes, he lets out a bleat that sounds suspiciously like "pay up." It stays with you. So does the image of the tree, that lone, towering palm twisting upward as if to say, "Look what you've done." You try to sleep that night, but you cannot shake the feeling that something has changed, that the island has started watching you back. You wake up with a headache shaped exactly like Kevin's horns. Last night's dream was not a dream. Kevin did try to sleep next to your hammock, then stole your pillow, then screamed into your face at exactly 3:12 a.m. No one intervened. Apparently, Kevin respects no laws, gods, or circadian rhythms. Jonah waves you over. "You missed something," he says, sipping something thick and purple. "A real scene last night." You brace yourself. Apparently, two of the village's more volatile residents, Split-Tooth Sally and No-Knees Nando, got into an argument over coconut storage rights. Sally accused Nando of stealing her nut stash, and Nando countered by claiming Sally was hoarding for an off-island black market, an actual market, like in a cave, with cave vendors selling illegal coconuts. Then came the duel. Not a sword fight. No, that would be civilized. This was a spit-off. You blink. Jonah grins. 2 bar stools. 1 jug of sour mango pulp. Winner's the one who can launch furthest without blinking. Historians still argue whether this was a formal method of conflict resolution, or just a product of extreme boredom and too much fermented jackfruit. Regardless, the village has rules, and this duel was sanctioned. Sally won. Barely. Nando blinked at the last second, possibly due to an aggressive parrot landing on his head mid-spit. He now owes her 20 coconuts and 2 weeks of latrine stirring duty. No one will make eye contact with him. You begin to realize something. Beneath the laughter and absurdity, this place is held together by a kind of grudging respect. Everyone plays along, because if they don't, it all unravels. The island survives because its people lean into the weirdness. Later that morning, you are invited to a gathering. Not a council, not a party, something in between. A kind of town gossip tribunal, held weekly under the banyan canopy, where the village comes together to discuss rumors, settle minor disputes, and tell embarrassing stories about each other to uproarious applause. You are ushered into the clearing. A crowd forms. A few people have brought snacks, sun-dried fish strips, roasted seaweed, and something called barnacle fudge. You wisely decline. Jonah steps forward with a dramatic flourish and announces, "Let the record show. Someone has been shaving coconuts in the night and leaving their husks in Miss Frangipane's bed." Gasps. Laughter. One person pretends to faint. Miss Frangipane, a woman with more rings than fingers, rises from her stool, and yells, "I know who it is. It's that slippery weasel, Loose Marvin." Everyone turns to Marvin, who is currently chewing on what looks like a beetle. Marvin shrugs, "Prove it." And so begins the trial of the coconut shavings. Evidence is presented: a trail of husks, a single broken sandal, and one suspiciously Marvin-sized bite mark on a mango peel. Marvin maintains his innocence. He calls a witness, a mute parrot named Derek. The parrot says nothing, but flaps dramatically. That seems to be enough for some. In the end, the Coconut Council votes. Clara, the eyeless, sniffs Marvin's hair and decrees him guilty. Punishment? He must donate 10 coconuts to the communal kitchen and perform a dramatic reenactment of the crime at next week's market day, with props. Everyone applauds. Marvin accepts his fate like a man who has performed worse roles before. This is what justice looks like here. You learn more as the day wears on. Rent is not the only economy. There is also tooth trading. Yes, you heard right. Due to a chronic shortage of dentists and a long history of sugarcane addiction, teeth have become something of a status symbol. A full set of decent chompers is the equivalent of nobility. Some people trade teeth for favors. Some carve them into charms. One man wears a necklace of molars he claims are his own. You hope he is lying. Rumors swirl about the tooth vault, a hidden stash of perfectly preserved pirate teeth buried beneath the tavern. But no one's found it. Or if they have, they are not talking. You also learn about the annual Rot Parade, an event held in honor of dental hygiene and terrible decisions. Participants dress in costumes made of old food, perform plays about the dangers of gum neglect, and crown a rot king, usually the person with the most horrifying dental horror story. The reigning champion once flossed with fishing line and accidentally hooked his own tongue. One fact sticks with you, though. Long ago, a traveling merchant tried to open a dentistry shop here. He lasted 3 days. On the 4th, he was politely escorted to the beach and told to leave. Why? Because if no one's teeth rot, Jonah says. Then how do you know who's lived? There is logic in the madness. That night, as you lie in your hammock with Kevin snoring ominously beside you, you think about how quickly this world has become normal. Rent paid in coconuts, justice by gossip, status measured in molars. You are not quite sure what tomorrow holds, but you have 2 coconuts under your pillow, just in case. And that feels oddly responsible. You wake up with coconut husk in your mouth and Kevin licking your foot. It is a typical morning. Jonah is waiting by the fire pit with 2 cups of what he calls clarity juice. You take 1 sip and immediately lose the memory of your own birthday. He laughs. You need to meet Queen Kalina. You raise an eyebrow. There are no royals here. Not officially. Not unless you count the Rent King. And he once tried to tax a rainbow, so legitimacy is questionable. Jonah leads you through the village, and then beyond it, down a coral-studded path that winds through overgrown banana trees. Eventually, you arrive at a clearing, and there she is, Queen Kalina, tall, stern, and one-eyed, though the eye patch is beaded with shells and sequins. She wears a crown of braided seaweed and molted crab shells. Her cloak is an old sail, and her staff is just a broom with attitude. She sits on a throne made of driftwood and disdain, flanked by two pigs she refers to as her personal security detail. She eyes you like she is trying to decide whether you're edible. "You the new coconut sleeper?" she asks, voice like smoked salt. You nod, and she smirks. You look softer than a damp mango. Introductions are brief. Kalina is not a woman of small talk. She tells stories like threats and threatens like lullabies. Jonah nudges you. Ask her about the toothless rebellion. You do, cautiously, and suddenly her whole demeanor changes. She leans back, sighs deeply, and looks up at the canopy overhead like she is seeing ghosts. "Ah, that foolish, beautiful week," she says. "It happened about 12 years ago. The rent king at the time, Barlow the Bald, had decided to raise the monthly coconut tax from 30 to 50 nuts per head. His reasoning? Inflation. Also, he was building a slide into his rainwater tub and wanted it gold-plated. The villagers were furious, but no one spoke out, not directly. That is when Kalina, who at the time was just Fishbone Kalina, decided to make a statement. I removed every coconut from my hut," she says, "and replaced them with teeth. Her logic, if the king wanted rent, he could have her molars, because she was done chewing on his nonsense." The movement spread quickly. People began rejecting coconuts. They paid their rent in fish scales, feathers, and most memorably, a wheel of cheese made entirely from condensed parrot milk. The king was not amused. And then came the great moment, the bonfire of the nuts. Kalina led a procession to the beach, where villagers tossed their coconuts into a pit and set it ablaze, chanting, singing, one person playing an accordion badly, but with passion. The smoke smelled sweet and angry, she says, like roasted rebellion. Historians still argue whether this uprising was a legitimate proto-anarchist movement or just a large-scale tantrum brought on by bad pineapple wine. Either way, it had an impact. The Rent King responded by banning alternative payment forms and declaring teeth non-negotiable items. He doubled the tax and even hired a tax enforcer from off-island, a tall man with a voice like vinegar and two pet seagulls trained to spy. Kalina, in return, created her own shadow rent system. People would pay her in stories, small gifts, or even coconut promises, marked pebbles symbolizing future payments. Her following grew, and for 1 week, the island had two rulers, the king in his palace, surrounded by armed parrots and fake coinage, and Kalina in her driftwood court, trading justice for poetry and grilled crab legs. The tension climaxed in a coconut standoff at the village square. Kalina stood on one side with her followers, armed with sticks and insults. The king on the other, waving an accounting ledger and screaming about economic collapse. No blood was shed, only coconuts, dozens of them, hurled back and forth, exploding like fibrous fireworks. In the end, the Rent King slipped on a husk, cracked his pride, and was carried off by his own parrots, who promptly defected to Kalina's court. She refused the throne, though. "I am no queen," she says now, poking the fire. "I just had better aim." You ask her why she still wears the crown. Because people remember things better when they sparkle. She offers you grilled plantain and a seat. For a while, you sit there, eating, laughing, listening to pigs snore. The jungle hums around you. Kalina hums too, some half-forgotten sea shanty with a rhythm like a heartbeat. And just as you are about to thank her and leave, she leans in close and whispers something that stops your breath cold. The coconut numbers, they are off. You blink. What? The counts, the collections, the coconut economy. It is wrong. Been wrong for months. She leans back, eyes narrowed. Someone is hoarding, quietly, patiently, and if we do not find out who, she does not finish. She does not have to. You leave Kalina's camp with your brain spinning faster than a drunk crab on stilts. Someone is hoarding coconuts. That may not sound earth-shattering, but here, where rent is paid in tropical fruit and wealth is measured in hairy spheres, it is financial arson. Coconut stockpiling is more than greedy. It is destabilizing, dangerous, potentially revolutionary, and yet no one is talking about it. You return to Shack Circle with new eyes. The usual commotion continues. Someone's wrestling an eel. Kids are playing tag with a stick shaped like a swordfish. And Kevin is urinating on the Rent King's fence again. But beneath the chaos, you start to notice odd little things. The communal coconut pile seems smaller. The tavern's prices have risen. 3 coconuts now for a single mug of whatever the heck is fermenting back there. And then there's the map. You find it while helping Pickle Bob patch a hole in his shack roof. Tucked between a pair of soggy pirate boots is a moldy scroll, barely readable. The ink has bled in places, the edges chewed by some creature with a clear hatred of geography. Still, it is a map, a real one, and it shows the island as it used to be, before half the jungle was cleared, before the Rent King's coconut depot expanded, before the mysterious X was scratched out in what appears to be burnt rum ink. You ask Pickle Bob about it. He squints at the parchment. That's the old surveyor's chart, he says. Back when they tried to organize the island by zones. Lasted a month. Then the goats ate Zone C. He points to the missing X. That used to be the coconut vault. You feel your spine do a little hiccup. The what? Bob nods. Original storage site. First Rent King used it to keep the communal supplies safe during storms. Locked it with a trapdoor. Hid the key in a barrel of pickled squid. Eventually, everyone forgot about it, or claimed they did. You stare at the space marked on the map. It is not far from the Devil's Palm Grove. Of course it is. That evening, you slip away with Jonah and the map. The jungle is denser here, pulsing with its own humid breath. You pass trees bent at impossible angles, a monkey eating a candle, and what you swear is a crab doing yoga. Finally, you reach a sunken clearing, and there it is. The ground dips in the center, overgrown with vines and moss, but unmistakably shaped. A trapdoor, wooden reinforced with metal, and bearing the faint trace of an old carving. A coconut cracked in two, balanced on a set of scales. Jonah whistles. That's the vault, all right. You clear it off together, and pry it open. Inside is a ladder descending into darkness. Because of course it is. You descend slowly. The air is cooler down here, damp and stale. The walls are lined with old crates, cracked and eaten by time. Most are empty, but a few. You crack one open. Coconuts, dry but intact. Hundreds of them. And then something else, papers. Ledger pages, curled and yellowed. The handwriting is messy, but one word appears again and again. Withdrawals. You leaf through them, heart racing. The numbers do not lie. Someone has been siphoning coconuts from the vault, secretly, steadily, for months, maybe longer. You hear a creak behind you. Jonah shushes you. Footsteps. You extinguish your lantern and crouch in silence. A shape moves above, silhouetted in the trapdoor's mouth. They linger, listening. Then, slowly, they vanish. You climb out, heart thudding, and glance at Jonah. We're not the only ones who remember this place, he says. The next morning, word spreads fast. Someone has found the vault. The whispers flood the village. Most people pretend to be surprised. A few clearly are not. The Rent King calls an emergency council. You attend. It is chaos. People yelling over each other, waving ledgers and coconuts, accusing each other of fraud, embezzlement, and in one case, nut witchery, which nobody defines, but everyone agrees sounds terrible. The king paces, sweaty and red-faced, shouting about economic sabotage and fruit-based treason. Kalina stands quietly at the back, arms crossed, a slow smile creeping across her face. Because here's the thing. Finding the vault is not just about storage. It is about control. And someone powerful, has been lying. You spend the next few days investigating quietly, asking questions, noticing things. There are signs of recent activity at the vault. Disturbed finds, fresh prints, an old coconut with bite marks. You start suspecting everyone, even Jonah, even yourself. Late one night, you revisit the vault, alone. The trapdoor's been moved. Inside, more crates are missing, and scratched into the inside wall, in the rough, jagged scrawl of someone in a hurry, are the words. It's not about the rent anymore. You sit at the edge of the vault in the dead of night, staring at that message scratched into the wall. It's not about the rent anymore. The words rattle in your mind like bones in a pouch. You repeat them under your breath, again and again, as if they will change meaning. They do not. It is not about the rent. It is about power. You climb out, brush the dirt from your palms, and suddenly realize something else. The air is quiet. Too quiet. No distant drums from the soggy boot. No parrot curses echoing through the trees. Not even Kevin's usual late-night tantrum over coconut placement. You are being watched. You do not see anyone, but you feel them. Eyes behind branches, breath behind the wind. You move carefully, sliding back toward the village, keeping to the shadows. Your feet know the way now. Every knot of root and curl of fern is familiar. When you return, the square is already lit. Torches, too many torches. The Rent King has summoned everyone to the shack circle. He stands on the tavern roof, still in his gold-threaded loincloth, waving a parchment in one hand and a coconut in the other. He looks furious, but underneath, you see it, panic, the glint of someone who has lost the plot, but refuses to admit it. A betrayal has occurred, he bellows. The vault has been compromised. Someone has undermined the very foundation of our glorious, nut-based economy. The villagers murmur. Some look confused. A few glance at Kalina, who remains stone-faced, arms folded. One of her pigs lets out a low, suspicious grunt. The Rent King points directly at you. You freeze. This newcomer, this outsider, was found near the vault. Digging. The crowd shifts. You raise your hands. I did not dig. The vault's been active. Someone else. Silence. The king snaps. He will have your moment. Jonah appears behind you, breathless. I did not say anything, he mutters. You do not believe him. The king continues. We will hold a nut tribunal. Tonight, you do not even get to ask what that is before two very serious-looking children with large sticks nudge you toward a wooden platform. Apparently, you are the first official defendant in a tribunal in 7 years. The last one involved a man accused of training parrots to pickpocket rent coconuts. He was found guilty. The parrots testified. You are brought before the Coconut Council again. Clamshell Clara sniffs the air and narrows her eyes at you. I smell vault dust, she mutters. Jonah reluctantly acts as your defense. He begins his argument with, Look, I am not saying they did not do anything wrong, but haven't we all, at some point, been near a coconut vault without knowing it? Not helpful. The charges: trespassing, unauthorized vault entry, coconut tampering, and worst of all, vault speech, which is basically talking about the vault while in the vault. A sacred silence law that no one knew existed until 30 seconds ago. Then Kalina speaks, without asking permission, without waiting her turn. I sent them, she says. I knew about the vault. I sent them to investigate, because I believe someone high up has been bleeding our supply, and it is not this one. The villagers murmur louder now. The Rent King is furious. Blasphemy. Kalina has always wanted my throne. I do not want your throne, she says flatly. I want truth. And then a voice from the crowd. Then tell them about the vault numbers. Your Majesty, it is Pickle Bob. He limps forward, holding a soggy ledger, waving it like it is a holy scroll. These are the logs from 5 years ago, he says. Back when we had a surplus. These, he says, holding up a second ledger, are the numbers from last month. Someone's been skimming, bit by bit, slowly, like a termite in a tree. Clamshell Clara's eyes flash. You accuse the king? No, Bob says. I accuse whoever wrote this. He throws down the newer ledger, and there, clear as day, in the margins, are the initials. RK. The Rent King fumbles for words. That stands for Royal Keepers. The Bookkeepers. Kalina raises an eyebrow. You mean Derek the mute parrot and Fern the sleepwalker? Yes, the king says, sweating. The villagers are not convinced. Jonah whispers in your ear. This is the part where someone usually runs. And sure enough, the king makes a break for it. He hurls his coconut at the crowd, flings himself off the tavern roof, and crashes directly into a fish crate. Parrots scatter. Kevin bleats. Someone yells, "Catch the rent thief." He bolts into the jungle, flailing and screaming about economic collapse and coconut futures. He is not seen again that night. What follows is pure island confusion. The Coconut Council disbands on the spot. The Rent King's hut is searched. Inside, they find dozens of marked coconuts, dried fish wrapped in ledger paper, and a puppet used to practice speeches. The villagers gather again. Murmurs, arguments, a sense of something breaking wide open. Kalina stands on the tavern roof this time. "We must reset," she says. "New rent rules, new system, and no more vault secrets." Someone shouts, "Make Kalina queen." She smirks. "I already am." That night, the rent is temporarily suspended. A festival is announced. There is dancing, drinking, shouting. Someone builds a coconut pyramid. Someone else knocks it over and is immediately forgiven. You sit in your hammock exhausted, but you feel it. The winds have changed. The nut economy has cracked. And somewhere, deep in the trees, a dethroned rent king mutters to himself, plotting, perhaps, or learning to speak crab. The next morning, the island wakes up hungover but hopeful. A new day, a new rain, a new coconut economy, though no one has quite figured out what that looks like yet. The rent, as promised, is suspended until further notice, which, in pirate speak, roughly translates to until somebody starts hoarding again. The first to react to the power vacuum is Kevin. He moves into the Rent King's former hut, drags in a pile of sea sponges, and posts a sign that simply reads, "Mine." No one contests it. Someone even brings him a coconut cocktail with a tiny umbrella. Kalina wastes no time. She gathers a council, not of the usual suspects, but a mix of oddballs and misfits. The toothless fishmonger, a retired stowaway who only speaks in nautical metaphors. And yes, you. Somehow, you have become part of this now. Kalina's plan is simple: restructure the rent system entirely. No longer will it be centralized. Instead, each shack, hut, or hammock-based household will pay coconuts into each other's needs. Communal rotating support. A web of obligation, not a pile. It is shockingly modern. Historians still argue whether this was a proto-mutual aid economy, or just everyone being too lazy to carry coconuts uphill anymore. Either way, things begin shifting. The communal kitchen receives a flood of supplies. The soggy boot offers free breakfast, so long as you clean your own mug. The Coconut Council is replaced by a new group, the Split Shell Circle, who meet weekly to discuss disputes, organize fishing parties, and decide who gets to name the next pig. The change is not smooth, of course. Old habits die hard. Loose Marvin tries to restart the ledger system by hiding coconuts in hollowed out loaves of bread. He is caught when a parrot pecks one open and yells, "Fraud," for 4 hours straight. Someone else tries to create coconut futures, trading promises of future payments based on imaginary interest. The villagers shut it down instantly. "If I wanted fake coconuts," says Aunt Gilda, I just paint rocks like last time. The old vault is officially decommissioned. Kalina has it sealed with stones and vines, and instead builds a coconut library on top, a quiet place where anyone can donate a coconut and take a book. The books are mostly moldy and half-eaten by termites, but the principle stands. You help build it, hammer in hand, sweat on your brow. You realize this is not just a funny island anymore. It is a real place, a functioning community, odd, chaotic, a little sticky, but real, and you are part of it. Still, not everyone is happy. A small group, calling themselves the Loyalists, begin whispering about the old days. They leave coconuts on the king's old porch. They chant things like, "Bring back the rent," and "Order through fruit." One even tries to declare themselves deputy coconut collector, wearing a sash made of banana peels. They are politely ignored. Then comes the storm. No warning. Just clouds rolling in like a bruised tide, waves battering the reef, and wind that howls like Kevin during bath time. Everyone scrambles. Tarps go up. Hammocks are secured. Pigs are herded. The soggy boot serves up emergency storm grog, which tastes like citrus and existential dread. You hunker down in the coconut library with Jonah, Kalina, and a dozen others. Rain pounds the roof like cannonballs. Then, in the middle of it all, lightning strikes the old Rent King's hut. The entire thing erupts in fire and steam. By morning, it is nothing but a scorched patch of earth and one slightly melted chair leg. Kevin is unharmed, furious, but unharmed, and in the ashes, someone finds a metal lockbox. Inside, ledgers, dozens, meticulously kept, not just of rent collected, but of debts owed, bribes taken, and secret coconut exchanges with off-island traders. Kalina pores over the pages. He was selling our coconuts to smugglers, she says, exchanging them for spices, sugar, even gold. You feel it like a slap. The entire rent system was rigged, not just hoarding, exporting. The king was profiting in secret while pretending to serve the people. That evening, Kalina calls a gathering. No ceremony, no throne, just a bonfire on the beach, torches in the sand, and a silence thicker than coconut cream. She holds up one of the ledgers. We were told this island was too small to matter, that we could not grow, that rent was our duty, and that the king was our guardian. She tosses the ledger into the flames. That was a lie. Everyone cheers, even the parrots. It is not a revolution anymore. It is a rebirth. Later that night, you walk alone along the beach. The waves lick your feet. The stars reflect in the shallows. And in the distance, deep in the jungle, you swear you hear the faint sound of rustling, like someone still out there, still watching. You hope it is just a goat. You wake to drums, not war drums, not festive ones either, more like debate drums, thudding in a rhythm that says, "We disagree, and we're going to sort it out with coconuts and yelling." You roll out of your hammock, Kevin already standing over you, wearing someone's lost eyeglasses, and follow the sound toward the banyan canopy. There, the entire village is gathered. Kalina stands in the center, arms crossed, glaring at Mr. Alabaster Finn, a man so thin he looks like a fishing rod in a trench coat. He was once the official shell counter, a ceremonial role with no actual function other than inspecting mollusks and complaining about tide patterns. Today, he is furious. These changes, he says, voice like creaky shutters, are destabilizing. We have no structure, no quotas, no enforcement. What's to stop us from sliding into total chaos? Someone in the crowd yells, "What structure?" Your ledger was a pile of snail shells with numbers scratched on them. Laughter erupts. But Alabaster is not alone. Several older villagers nod along. People who liked knowing they owed 30 coconuts and not a single nut more. Predictability as a certain comfort. Kalina raises a hand. This is not lawless, she says. This is learning how to listen again. When was the last time any of us helped without being told? Shared without being counted? A soft murmur of agreement swells. But it is clear a divide is forming. You spend the rest of the day trying to patch the cracks, literally and figuratively. You join a team rebuilding the village pier, destroyed in the recent storm. As you hammer rotten planks into submission, you overhear two workers arguing. One insists they should track hours and distribute coconuts accordingly. The other, "If I wanted a job," he says, "I'd still be stuck on that coffee boat that exploded." You realize this is the question now. Is this a community of generosity or of transactions? Later, you and Jonah hike to the old lagoon, the one that looks like a teardrop from above and smells like regret up close. He tells you something strange. There's a ship offshore, he says, has not docked, just sitting out there. No flag, no movement. You squint. And yes, on the horizon, a shape, too far to make out details, too close to be ignored. Jonah's voice drops. We think it's one of the old trade ships, maybe here for their final delivery. He says it like a joke, but it is not. That night, Kalina calls a private meeting. You, Jonah, a few of the new council members. She unrolls a salt stain chart. These are the old merchant lanes, she says. Routes we stopped using after the rent system collapsed, but someone must have kept them open. You all stare at the map. They might not know yet that the king is gone. Kalina continues. Or worse, they do, and they're coming to collect. You ask what they traded for. Coconuts, obviously, but also maps, reef access, black coral, even people. That hits hard. You had thought this place was too small, too silly, too strange to be part of any real world darkness. Turns out, it is not. The next day, you help prepare, just in case. Watch posts go up. Signal fires are laid. Kevin is stationed near the reef with a helmet made from an old cooking pot. You are not sure why. He seems to like it. The ship stays there, waiting. No flags, no messengers, just a floating threat. And then, just before dawn, it vanishes. Gone. No splash, no sails, just disappeared. People breathe again, but the tension stays. In the days that follow, the hollow husk steps into the light. They reveal themselves, partially, representatives, not leaders. They claim no power, just presence. They want to help rebuild, but on their terms, rotating contributions, seasonal rent instead of monthly, and most shocking of all, a coconut-free zone, an entire section of the village where coconuts cannot be used as payment, only bartering, skills, labor, art, even jokes are currency. You visit it one afternoon. A child trades a drawing for a fish. An old man repairs sandals in exchange for a story. Someone sings a song so bad it makes a goat faint, but he still earns a papaya. It works in its own bizarre, beautiful way. Historians still argue whether this was the first experiment in emotion-based economics or just what happens when people get too much sun and not enough zinc. You sit by the fire that evening, watching sparks drift into the stars. You have been on this island for weeks now. You have paid rent in coconuts, escaped a goat attack, discovered a rebel society in a well, survived a monarchy, a mutiny, a tropical storm, and an economic collapse. And somehow, against every sensible instinct, you have fallen in love with this place. This weird, warm, unpredictable place. You ask Jonah if things will ever go back to the way they were. He shakes his head. No one wants that. Then he pauses. But something's coming. I feel it. And as he says that, a single coconut rolls down the path. No one touched it. No one claims it. It just rolls and comes to a stop at your feet. You stare at the coconut, perfectly round, untouched, gleaming like it knows something you do not. Jonah sees your face and mutters, "Oh no, not that look," because you are already doing the thing you should never do on this island. You are following a coconut. You pick it up. It is unusually light, no sound when shaken. It feels hollow, just like the symbol of the hollow husk. Without a word, you start walking. Past the banyan canopy, past Kevin, who is currently in a wrestling match with a clothesline, and into the deeper jungle, where even the parrots whisper. The path twists. Gnarled roots curl like fingers. You duck under moss-draped branches and arrive at a clearing you have not seen before. There, sitting cross-legged in a circle of coconut shells, is a person you have never met. They wear a robe made of dried banana leaves. No mask, no crown, just a face so still it could be carved from driftwood. "Welcome," they say. You ask who they are. "I'm the archivist." Of course they are. They gesture to a mound of what looks like coconut relics, old tokens, shaved husks with etched names, bits of parchment sealed with sap, every piece a record of a trade, a gift, a betrayal. "I keep the island's memory," the archivist explains, "what others forget, I remember." You glance around. The entire grove is an open-air vault. The walls are moss. The floor is mulch. But somehow, it feels like a cathedral. You ask what the hollow coconut means. They smile slightly. It means you are now part of the memory. They hand you a shard, a broken piece of an old ledger tablet with a name half scratched out, Brine. You do not recognize it. The archivist watches your expression. She was the first person to refuse rent, they say, 3 generations ago. Paid in kindness instead, the king mocked her, but people remembered. You feel a strange heat in your chest, like you are standing in the middle of a legend and only now realizing it is real. You ask why you were brought here. The archivist holds up a nut, because memory needs caretakers, not kings. And then, almost casually, they say, the hollow husk chose you weeks ago. Wait, what? You sputter. But I barely know how to build a fire. They shrug. Leadership's not about skill. It's about attention. You noticed. You asked. You listened. They placed the hollow coconut into your hands. And suddenly you feel it. A weight that is not weight. A responsibility. You are being asked to guide something bigger than yourself. You are about to object, loudly, when the archivist says you do not have to decide now. Thank goodness. Just remember, that is all we ask. You walk back slowly. As you return to the village, it feels changed. Or maybe you are. The children are building a raft made of barrels. Someone is teaching Kevin how to high-five with limited success. Kalina is painting a mural on the side of the old ledger hall. Scenes from the past few weeks. The bonfire, the storm, the well, the pig parade. You see your face there. Small, but unmistakable. You sit by the fire. Jonah joins you. He sees the coconut in your hands and nods without asking. You in? You shake your head. I am something else. You tell him about the archivist. He whistles. Did not know they still existed. Me neither. You look up. The stars are out. The air thick with tropical warmth, and the smell of someone accidentally burning crab again. It is not perfect. It is never perfect. But it is alive. And just when you are about to relax, boom, a sound like thunder. You both bolt upright. But it is not thunder. It is drums, deep, distant, and deliberate, from the far side of the island, where no one lives, where the jungle grows too thick and the trees lean in close like conspirators. Jonah looks at you. That's the old signal. You ask, from who? He says, nothing. The drum beat continues. 3 slow beats, then silence, then again. Someone is calling, someone from the past, and it sounds like they are finally ready to be heard. You do not sleep that night, not because of the heat, or Kevin's new habit of yodeling in his dreams, or the distant screams of a goat giving birth to triplets behind the soggy boot. No, it is the drums. 3 slow beats. Pause, repeat, all night, calling from the forgotten side of the island. By dawn, the entire village is tense. People speak in half whispers, heads swiveling toward the jungle. Even Kalina seems unusually quiet, her eyes locked on the eastern horizon. You finally ask her, what is over there? She exhales slowly. The side we do not go to. Why? She smirks. Because the last time someone did, they came back covered in blue paint, speaking only in riddles, and insisting they were a mushroom. Fair enough. But you know, deep down, you have to go. Jonah agrees reluctantly. If you're going, I'm going. But if we die, I'm blaming your curious face. You pack light, lantern, rope, a half-eaten mango, and 3 coconut tokens. 1 old, 1 hollow, 1 smooth as glass. You do not know why, but they feel important. The path into the eastern jungle is not really a path, more like a suggestion. Vines tug at your arms, roots snatch your feet, and somewhere in the distance, something screams that might be a bird or a very dramatic lizard. After hours of hacking through foliage, you find it. A clearing, dead quiet. In the center, a stone circle, ancient, moss-covered, cracked by time and storms. There are drums, 5 of them, positioned at perfect intervals, as if waiting for a ritual long forgotten. And someone is playing them. Not a person, a device. Wooden levers, hollow gourds, a counterweight system powered by dripping water. Ingenious and eerie, Jonah whistles. This is old. Like first rent king old. You step forward, inspecting the drums. Each bears a symbol. One is a spiral. One is a coconut cracked in half. One is a tree. One is a set of scales. And the last is blank. You touch it. It is still warm. You both search the clearing. In the underbrush, you find a hatch. Iron, rusted, hidden beneath leaves. Of course there is a hatch. You open it and descend. The tunnel smells of salt, mildew, and secrets. At the bottom is a chamber like the old vault, but older, somehow wiser. Carvings along the walls show the island's earliest days. Arrivals on rafts, barter under moonlight, a meeting under a banyan tree, and then a schism. Figures drawn in 2 groups, one carrying coconuts, the other holding nothing. Jonah reads the etchings aloud, the ones who bore the fruit, and the ones who bore the truth. There is no further explanation. You find a stone pedestal in the center of the room. 3 indentations, each shaped to fit one of your tokens. You place them. Click. The wall rumbles. The panel opens. Inside is a single object, a coconut. Of course, but not just any coconut. It glows faintly. The husk is etched with hundreds of tiny marks, forming a spiral that seems to move even when you're not looking. It hums with warmth like it is alive. Jonah whispers, "What is that?" You do not know, but it feels sacred. You take it, and that is when the vision hits. Not a dream, not a hallucination, a memory, but not yours. You see the island centuries ago, before the rent kings, before the ledgers and vaults. Just people, sharing fish, building shacks, trading jokes for coconuts and coconuts for songs. Then, a drought, no fruit, no food, and fear creeps in. So someone, nameless, proposes a system. Store the coconuts, count them, distribute them. It works, at first, but then the counters want more, for their efforts. The keepers want more, for protection. And slowly, trade becomes tax, community becomes currency, and the island forgets. You come back to yourself sweating, shaking. You realize something terrible and beautiful at once. The rent was never about greed. It was about fear. And now, you are holding the cure. You leave the chamber slowly, coconut in hand, mind reeling. The jungle is silent. The drums have stopped. Jonah looks at you. So, you say only this? We need to remember that night, You call a gathering. No throne, no torches, just firelight, driftwood benches, and every villager leaning forward like it is story time. You hold up the glowing coconut. This is not treasure. It is memory, the first memory. And then you tell the vision. All of it. No one interrupts. Even Kevin is quiet. When you finish, Kalina rises slowly and bows, not to the coconut, to you. The others follow. It is not a coronation. It is not politics. It is gratitude. The glowing coconut is placed in the coconut library, where no one guards it, but everyone watches over it, because now they remember. The truth is back where it belongs, and the island, it begins to heal. The days that follow unfold like the slow exhale after a deep breath. The drums do not return. The forest quiets. Even the wind seems to soften, rustling the palm fronds with something like reverence. And the village, your strange, sunburned, slightly damp village, leans into a rhythm it has not known in generations. No more ledgers, no more quotas, no more coconut collectors skulking through the night with burlap sacks. Instead, the people begin to build their lives around something quieter, something older, a kind of balance. The glowing coconut is placed in the very center of the coconut library, not locked away, not fenced off, just resting on a smooth piece of driftwood where anyone can come, sit, and remember. People do, every day, in silence or in pairs. Some touch it gently, others just stare. It becomes more than a symbol. It becomes a story. You are not treated as a hero, thank goodness. You are still just you, the strange visitor who once mistook a sea cucumber for a sandwich and got sunburned in the shape of a fish. But there is a difference now in the way they look at you, not with awe, with recognition, like someone who finally understands the language of the island. Kalina visits you often. She is quieter these days, thoughtful. One afternoon, she says, "You know what the real revolution was?" You shake your head. She grins. "We stopped measuring people by what they owed. We started measuring them by what they gave freely." You let that settle in your chest. Jonah, ever the skeptic, is slower to change. He still worries. "We're too loose," he mutters. "We'll drift again." But then you see him giving away half his catch to a group of kids building a sand fort, and you realize his heart is already in it, even if his eyebrows are not. Kevin declares himself the island's first official, unofficial coconut inspector, which involves little more than him sniffing coconuts and declaring them emotional or suspicious. Nobody stops him. He seems happy. As for you, well, you start to find small things to fix. A cracked water barrel, a footpath overgrown with ferns. You even teach the children how to play guess the fruit by touch, though you have to ban durians after someone cries. You start living here, really living. And then, one morning, it appears. A ship, but not on the horizon, in the bay. Not a smuggler's vessel or a trader's brig. This one is different. Bright sails, painted hull, no weapons. It flies a banner you do not recognize. A spiral inside a cracked circle. The hollow husk knew this was coming. You can tell by the way Kalina reacts, not surprised, but alert. They found us, she says simply. You gather at the shore as the crew rows ashore. There are no threats, no ultimatums, just a single person stepping out, tall, sun-kissed, with calloused hands and a quiet smile. They call themselves Mira, and they explain everything. Long ago, this island was one of several dots in the same ocean, all born from shipwrecks, trade routes, and storms. Most followed the same arc, barter to rent to monarchy to collapse. But a few, like yours, tried something else. We've been waiting, Mira says, for someone to light the memory again. You ask what they mean. The coconut you found? We call it the root memory. There were once 7, each tied to a piece of the old truth. Most were lost. Yours is the first we've seen in decades. You glance at the villagers, some excited, some wary. What do you want from us? Kalina asks. Nothing, Mira replies. Just to share stories. Trade, if you like, but not in coconuts, in ideas. The island accepts. The next few weeks bloom into something magical. Sails go up again, not for conquest, but for connection. You see villagers exchanging songs, recipes, rope knots, even a strange board game called crab diplomacy that no one understands, but everyone plays anyway. Children teach other children how to fish with glass bottles. Someone starts a newsletter. Kevin becomes an international sensation after falling into a creative pickles and emerging fluent in 3 bird calls. You watch it all and realize this is what the island was always meant to be. Not a place of rules, a place of remembering. One evening, as the stars spread like freckles across the sky, you sit on the beach beside Kalina, Jonah, and Mira. You think it'll last? Jonah asks. Mira shrugs. Things rarely do, but that's not the point. Kalina smiles. We're not afraid of ending anymore. You lie back in the sand. Let the night wash over you. Far above, the stars shift. Below, the waves lap gently, whispering old truths in new rhythms. And beside you, a coconut rolls gently against your foot, hollow, warm, and humming. It begins with a whisper, not a sound, but a shift, subtle, like the hush that falls just before a storm, or the moment a candle flickers for no reason. The island is calm, thriving even, and yet something in the wind carries a question. You notice it in the way people pause mid-laughter, the way Kalina keeps scanning the tree line during council meetings, and the way Jonah frowns at the stars, as if they have rearranged themselves overnight. You, too, begin to feel it. Something unspoken, something circling. At first, it seems like restlessness. People grow impatient with the new systems. Some find the barter network clumsy. Others miss the ease of handing over a coconut and calling it a day. A few begin to form clusters, groups that trade only within themselves, quietly building mini economies inside the larger one. It is not malicious, just human. Kalina notices. She addresses the village one evening beneath the old banyan. This island was not saved by perfection, she says, but by memory. We must not forget what we've learned. Value cannot live in one place. Not in fruit, not in people, not even in ideas. It must breathe, it must move. The speech helps for a while, but then the whispers return. Someone discovers another hidden vault. This one is different, deeper, older, filled not with coconuts, but tokens. Tiny discs made of carved coral, each marked with symbols no one recognizes. They shimmer slightly in the torchlight, as though reluctant to be seen. You bring one to the coconut library, lay it beside the root memory. The glowing coconut dims, just slightly. No one knows what it means. The archivist appears that night, seemingly out of nowhere, and inspects the token in silence. You ask if they have seen anything like it before. They say only, this was before rent, before memory was written down, before we learned to trade stories. You ask if it is dangerous. They pause too long. It is old, they finally say. Older than ownership. That does not help. A week later, more tokens surface, washed up on the shore, found wedged in tree trunks, hidden inside a hollow pig statue. Long story. And with each one, the mood shifts. People start hoarding again. Not coconuts, not food, information. Someone tries to sell a secret, the location of an underground spring. Another offers to rent access to their lookout spot in exchange for 3 coral tokens and a personal favor. The barter system begins to buckle. You confront Kalina. She looks exhausted. I did not think it would come this fast, she says. What? The reset. You do not understand at first. But then she tells you what she has suspected for some time. The root memory. It was not just a beginning. It was a warning. She shows you carvings found near the second vault. They depict the spiral collapsing inward, the cracked coconut bleeding into the sea, an island being swallowed by its own systems. We were not the first to try to remember, she whispers. We were just the first to get far enough to forget again. You feel a cold pit open in your stomach, because it is happening. Again, the island is beginning to slide back into something it thought it had escaped. Not rent, not royalty, something deeper, the hunger to measure, to assign worth, to define everything, even kindness, as a transaction. Jonah, of course, refuses to panic. So what? We course correct, pull the old timers into a meeting, ban the coral tokens. We've done it before, but the tokens are already everywhere. People carry them like lucky charms. Some believe they bring dreams. Others say they hum at night. One man insists his grants him visions of past lives, though he also tried to marry a coconut 2 weeks ago, so his testimony is questionable. You consider destroying them, but Kalina warns, symbols do not die when burned. They shift, so instead, you gather the villagers once more. You tell them the story, all of it, the root memory, the vaults, the archivist, the collapse of past systems. You do not preach. You just remember. And then gently you place one of the coral tokens beside the glowing coconut for all to see. There is a flicker, a brief shimmer of golden light between them. And then nothing. But in that moment, something changes in the crowd. A few people step forward and lay their tokens down, not to discard them, to surrender them, to say, this will not rule me. And so begins a new ritual. Every full moon, the villagers gather and place their tokens, coral, coconut, or carved driftwood, around the root memory. They do not burn them. They do not hide them. They simply acknowledge them. Then they tell a story, one each, about a kindness they gave without expecting anything in return. No trades, no ledgers, just memory. You realize then you were never chosen to lead this island. You were chosen to help it remember how to lead itself. And it does. Wobbly, imperfect, glorious. You fall asleep that night under a sky full of stars, fireflies blinking in time with the soft crash of waves. The wind brushes your face like a lullaby. Somewhere, Kevin is singing something vaguely operatic to a basket of pineapples. The reset never came. Or maybe it did, but you made it through. The island breathes differently now. You notice it in the way the sand feels under your feet, softer, more certain, as if the very ground knows it has survived something. The air carries fewer questions, more songs. The pigs have stopped trying to escape the pens every third Tuesday. Kevin has taken to composing lullabies for turtles. The days are long and sweet and slightly surreal, like the whole place is running on moonlight and second chances. The villagers begin referring to time not in days or months, but in stories. Back when the second vault opened, someone might say, or just after the reset tried to sneak in. It is not a calendar. It is a collective memory, and it flows like a river through every shared meal, every hammock nap, every storm weathered together. Mira stays. She builds a small hut near the banyan tree and becomes something between a neighbor and a myth. She brings new stories from other islands, one where people use seashells to vote, another where the tides determine bedtime, and listens to yours in return. Trade flourishes again, but this time it is not about gaining. It is about exchanging connection. You and Kalina walk often now, mostly in silence. She is still fierce, still brilliant, but the weight in her shoulders has lightened. She has started painting again. Once, she hands you a sketch of a tree made of coconuts, its roots wrapped around an old ledger book. You hang it in the coconut library. The children call it the memory tree. You do not correct them. Jonah eventually admits he was wrong about many things. Not in words, of course, but you catch him once, leaving a handful of fresh fruit outside the hut of a man who had mocked him weeks earlier. No note, no fanfare, just a quiet apology in mangoes. The hollow husk becomes less secret. Their spiral symbol appears in places you least expect, painted on the side of a clay pot, drawn in the sand by a child's embroidered into a hammock's corner. Not as a brand, not as a power, just presence. A reminder that systems can be broken, that memories can be rebuilt. And you begin to write, not ledgers, not records, stories, your own and those given to you. You fill pages with the tales of the island, with coconut revolutions and goat uprisings, with vaults and visions, and Kevin's brief but passionate affair with a sponge he mistook for a priest. You write not to explain, but to remember. One morning, the root memory dims, not darkens, just eases, as if it knows its work is done. The island no longer needs it to shine so brightly. The light now lives in the people. You do not mourn. You smile, because it is not the coconut that mattered. It never was. It was the remembering, the asking, the choice. On your final evening before your planned departure, yes, you are leaving. Just for a while, Kalina finds you by the shore. The sunset turns the sky to amber and ash, and the waves nudge the sand like they are reluctant to say goodbye. Think you'll come back? She asks, a small smile playing on her lips. You say, this place is a tattoo. You do not leave it. You carry it. She nods. Good. That was the test. You blink. There was a test. She grins, winks, and walks away. You laugh. And then, before bed, you take one last walk. Past the library, past the market stalls, past the beach where the children play their ridiculous coconut kick game with rules that change every 2 minutes. You stop at the banyan tree, place a hand against its bark, close your eyes. You hear the island, not just wind or waves or birds. You hear memory, soft and steady, alive. You whisper, thank you, then turn toward your hut, where Kevin is waiting with a bag full of snacks you absolutely did not ask for, and a travel plan that somehow involves floating on a raft made entirely of cured fish. You sigh, and you smile, because, of course, this is the forgotten island where pirates paid rent in coconuts, and somehow it remembered you back. Now, close your eyes for a moment. Let the sounds of the island fade to a gentle hum in the distance, the waves easing against the sand, the wind whispering through palm fronds, the soft rustle of leaves brushing stories into the night air. Let your breath slow. Let your shoulders drop just a little more into your pillow. The coconuts are still. The village is quiet. Even the stars seem to rest. You are safe. The weight of the island's memory no longer presses, but floats, gentle, like driftwood on a tide that asks nothing of you but to be carried. No more ledgers, no more rules, just warmth, just rhythm, just the sense that somewhere in the world, a small island full of unlikely heroes and strange traditions is breathing in the dark, whole and real and a little ridiculous. You made it through the rent, through the reset, through the storm and the secrets and the goat-related trauma. You held memory in your hands and did not drop it. And now here you are, heart beating steady, mind at ease, spirit just a bit fuller than before. Let the island slip behind your eyelids now. Let it rock you gently like a hammock swaying under moonlight. Let its laughter echo soft and far away. Sleep well, traveler. You remembered, and that was enough. Good night.